Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour, sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing, Eastside Jiu-Jitsu, and That's Badass Wood Art. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button below for more Vikings content throughout the regular season. The Vikings just wrapped up their second preseason game, lost again, but it really doesn't matter because we're just kind of looking at the guys and if
tell that to the Baltimore Ravens, Matt.
That's true. What are they at? 25 straight preseason
I think it's
wins?
24 heading in tonight or something like that.
That's nuts.
Zim would be proud.
Zim did have an astonishing good preseason record. But yeah, records really don't matter in preseason. But there were some guys who stood out this past week. I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on who stood out to you. Ryan was at the game, so he got the first-hand experience.
Got to take the kids, man. It's a good excuse to take the little ones.
Yeah,
he's got that extra season ticket now, or two, so you can take four people.
Yes, sir.
But, Ryan, we can start with you, man. What did you see on Saturday that was worthy of talking about?
Yeah, I was trying to keep an eye on some of the players that I really am want to see succeed, right? Obviously, I want everyone to succeed, but there's some players that, we drafted higher or that I really liked coming out of the draft, either this year, last year, whatever. So my eyes were really on Lewis Thien and Andrew Booth a lot on defense this game. And honestly, I know Thien really had that one really bad play where, obviously you got to at least make contact, but for sure, at least make contact, but really should have made that tackle.
Sure.
Where Tajay Spears went off for that long touchdown. And again, I'm watching from the end zone, right? So it's kind of coming right at me, but it's a tough play. And Tajay Spears made a great play on that in the hole there.
Is slippery. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. He was drafted if he would have probably gone higher if he didn't have some medical concerns, but he's a good player. So outside of that play, though, I thought Lewis Thien had a really good game. Really good, maybe is a stretch, but a good game. And I think he had a sack. He had a big third down stop, a big hit over the middle after a completed pass, kind of playing that zone. So yeah, I mean, I was impressed with his game. And then Andrew Booth, I thought Andrew Booth played really well as well. He had one bad play where he had a one-on-one opportunity at the running back to save a first down on third down. He missed the tackle. Lewis Thien ended up having to come in and push him out of bounds. I believe it was Lewis Thien. But outside of that, he was pretty sticky in coverage. He was talking trash the whole game. And granted, I don't know if it was warranted or not, but he was doing it, which I like. I
love the shit talking. Love that.
Yeah. So I think those two had a pretty good game. I mean, considering, I know Thien is getting trashed on Twitter because of that missed tackle, but again, you can't just take one play and just blow it up into the whole guy's career here, right? I mean, he had actually a good game. So I was pretty happy with it. And then on the offensive side of the ball,
hold on one second. Can we just talk about how absurd it is that people are reacting this way about Lewis Thien? The guy literally had a compound fracture, barely played last year. This is his real first game action, and he misses one play versus a very elusive running back. And somebody said cut him. Now everyone probably knows who that is, but that's just ridiculous.
I actually have no idea who said that, but that's, I don't know either. Hilarious.
Oh, I can send it to you, but
the takes are going to get wild though.
I know, but
I mean, again, people have high expectations. First round pick, right? Touted, and again, who we took in place of the ball. No, hey, you know me. I'm a defender at this point because I have been impressed with his play this preseason. But we have Kyle Hamilton right at our fingertips there in that situation. Sure. We trade back. Kyle Hamilton's playing well last year. I don't know how he's doing this preseason or if he's even playing this preseason, but
even guys like Jalen Petrie for the Texans who have looked really good.
Petrie, Kirby Joseph for the Lions, right? And Brisker for the Bears. So there's some good safeties that came out of last year's class, and Lewis Thien is playing catch up due to that injury. So I mean, I get the high expectations, but again, it's one play. And is that going to negate all the different plays where he was in the right spot, did make contact, did make the tackle? I just don't understand why the sack that he had isn't being glorified as much as getting as much love as the missed tackle is getting that much hate. So,
yeah, and I also think he's flying around. He's always near the ball, and in just the brief tape that I've watched, and I even sent to you guys before we hopped on here, just he's even kind of calling out stuff in communicating on where to pass off coverage and whatnot. And so I'm not here for the Lewis Cine slander, through 2 preseason games. Give me a freaking break. All right. You were going to talk on offense, but I feel like we got to get Miles in here, who is probably working and doing this at the same time.
I will not confirm nor deny.
I can cut that out too if you don't want me to air it.
No, you're fine.
Miles, who stood out from you on the defensive side this weekend?
I mean, we talked about Lewis Cine. I thought he did have a better game than what he got credit for. I also think defensively, I've seen you post a few clips, but I think guys like TJ Smith had a couple of decent plays.
Really well.
I mean, I think the hard part is that defensive line got ran over for the most part all game, so it's hard to call some of those guys standouts because they literally let them run for over 200 yards. And now I know a lot of that Tennessee team is it's the preseason, and if you run the ball down their throats, it's going to happen. But I think it's just tough to see some of these guys. I think maybe guys like Joan Williams, looked better than he did week 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we still have Najee Thompson. I would love to see a little bit more reps on defense, but as a special teamer, that dude, I can already tell that fans are in love with this dude, and they're basically have already claimed a roster spot for him.
He's already made the team.
He's already made the team, and I'm not saying he shouldn't either, because that'd be awesome. That's a really cool story. But guys like that,
Ivan Pace jumped out a little bit again.
I was just gonna say Ivan Pace leading the defense, with the green dot, and I just think I'm not sure how I don't quite remember how much into the second half he played, but obviously they pulled him. Troy Reeder has been a little bit more, I think, disappointing to me than I thought he would be. Not that I thought he was really good or anything, but more as a depth piece. I thought maybe there'd be a little bit more, especially an understanding of Kevin O'Connell from LA. Now I know he's not from this defense, so it might be a little bit of a transition for him, but I thought just as a veteran, he'd be a little bit better as a depth piece. And maybe in games with other starters, he might be a little bit better and rise to that a little bit more. Because I think the one thing with preseason games is all these backups, third string, fourth string guys that aren't going to make rosters, backups are playing with some of these guys. So it's harder to stand out in a team game when everybody around you might not be NFL caliber players. And so that some of that stuff's tough. It's tough to read and understand from a guy like Troy Reeder. Maybe it's the guys around him aren't as good, so it's easier to expose some of the things. But you'd also still like to just see some veterans stand out. Who else? I mean,
I thought Whitley looked good. By the way, I don't know if you saw any of his plays, but he was relentless, and he was just busting through. I would say our defensive line as a whole did a lot better in pass rush in passing downs than they did, rush defense. But yeah, Whitley was another guy who I was like, oh, okay. Had a few good plays there as well.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't even know he was on the team. Sheldon Day.
Oh yeah, he had
I didn't even realize he was on the team, and all of a sudden I'm like, who is that? I think he's the one that forced that fumble, and he ended up picking it up and whatever. But I was like, oh, who is it? And I'm like, Sheldon Day, blast from the past, Notre Dame cred right there. I haven't heard that name in years, I feel like. So,
well, let's
Theo Jackson. Theo Jackson was another one I thought
played well.
Had some splash plays. And a few times they call his name on the broadcast, and it's hard when you're not locked into guys in the preseason. It's better to go back and watch, because I don't always watch the preseason. I like to watch specific guys sometimes, so it's hard to watch the game as a whole. So it's a little bit different to review it, but like as a whole, like he stood out. He had a few good plays. I've seen some people say, like I think Andrew Kramer came out for the Star Tribune and said that he thinks Theo Jackson make the team over Jay Ward, which I'd have a hard time believing that, only just because he's a 5th-round pick and he's a rookie. And so like most teams want their rookies and their like current draft picks to stay. Like you don't want to, it's not like even saying giving up, but like those guys usually have a step above any outside player that's like a veteran minimum type player, like a Theo Jackson. So I'd have a hard time seeing that, but you never know.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up Jay Ward's name. I haven't heard a lot about him thus far in training camp, and so maybe that's someone with this tape we just go back and look just to see how he's doing.
And I was trying to keep an eye on him during the game. I didn't think he like played bad. I just he was definitely, he didn't make any splash plays, but I don't think he made any like crazy big mistakes either. So it's kind of hard to like, I don't know, judge somebody off of like, because you don't know if they're not around the ball, you don't really know what they're doing, right? So
I
was trying to watch him a little bit.
Right, it's you're surrounded. It's supposed to be a team game, and who knows? Hold on, I just got a notification that Scene is hurt.
Oh,
could be something else though.
Ugh.
What did you see?
Alec Lewis, Vikings safety Lewis Scene just came up injured a bit. Looked like he tweaked his groin. He's going to the tent.
Those are never fun. I can tell you guys from experience that shit is not fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Looks like Addison is back out there.
We got a lot of good news today.
Got a red jersey, but yeah.
Addison, Naylor, Asamoah.
I'm excited about that one.
Like we got all the gang is back together.
I'm just kidding.
Gosh.
I'm just kidding.
Let's switch to the offensive side quick just to recap Saturday's game. Somebody that stood out to me who probably isn't making the team, but Ben Sims, he just looked the part of an NFL tight end. He was, running good routes. He was a very good inline blocker. I think you maybe saw the post I sent out about the crackback block that he had to kind of free up Ty Chandler. And so when it comes down to the preseason, you're just kind of looking at guys and seeing who stands out. And I would say the third tight end position is probably up for grabs. I don't know. We haven't really seen Johnny Munt this preseason. And
I think he played the first game, didn't he? And then he didn't play this game.
They kept out a lot more guys this game than they did the first one because of the inter-squad scrimmages.
Yeah. Nick Muse has played well. Ben Sims has played well. I'm missing somebody in that group. But, yeah, tight end is another – it looks to be a very deep position group for the Vikings. So,
should we talk about that real quick, Matt?
Yeah.
So I've had a few people like – I think you like people mentioning like roster spots and things. And I think sometimes we overhype like solid preseason game performances for like bottom of the tier roster guys, which I mean, that's the only glimpse people get to see of some of these guys. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
But like I've seen people say, oh, should the Vikings keep 4 tight ends and keep Nick Muse because they don't want to subject him to waivers, those types of things. And I just wanted to say, like, I think we overrate some of that in that I think Nick Muse being around is great, but like the roster in itself isn't built to roster 4 tight ends on the 53 and a fullback.
Yeah.
So like there's that. And then I also just think like Nick Muse is like the perfect practice squad type of tight end in that you have him on the practice squad, call him up because he's been around and he knows the playbook and you think you could maybe play him in a pinch if you had to. But like, I'm just not sure as a total, he's probably ready to be an every game dresser player type of guy. And so I don't know, that just could be me maybe overcorrecting that too.
I definitely agree. Was Muse was he a Spielman Zimmer pick?
7th round pick last year?
Last year.
So he was a crazy guy. I don't know. I mean, the hard part is I'm not watching every rep of him, and I can obviously go back and do so because from a receiving perspective, he seems to have the juice that we need, probably from a third guy, right? However, I have no idea how he's doing as a blocker. So that's kind of the double-edged sword, so to speak, of like you have to be able to do both. I think at least competently as that third tight end, because we do have the more defined pass receiver in Hawkinson and the more defined blocker in Oliver. And I know they both can do both, but you need to kind of have that good balance there. So I don't know how he's doing. I know that from the past, we've seen that third tight end, whether it be, Conklin back in the day or whatever, they've been able to kind of progress and develop. So we want to get somebody in that spot, I think, that has that potential, which is why I like Muse in the tight end 3 spot, but he's got a bit of a battle against Munt, because Munt has, some history.
And Kevin O'Connell, whether you take it as a compliment or not, did call Johnny Munt the best third tight end in the NFL, or tight end 3, whatever it was. It wouldn't surprise me to see them actually move on from Nick Muse if Ben Sims kind of performs, because he's also a rookie, and that's probably more feasible to sneak onto a practice squad. But it's an interesting conversation. And
they snuck Nick Muse on the practice squad last year.
I just don't know if you can do it again. Maybe you can.
I mean, this is where I'm at with guys like Nick Muse as an example. He's not the only person, but I feel like a lot of teams have players like Nick Muse on their roster that fans of all those teams are like, oh man, I don't know if we can sneak that player through waivers. But like every team has these types of players that they're excited about, that teams don't always covet or need to covet because they have their own in-house guys. Yeah. And so again, that doesn't mean he wouldn't get plucked by somebody else. If you waive him, I still want like guys to go make 53-man rosters elsewhere. Yeah. But like, I do think sometimes we overrate our own players because they're the ones that we see every day. But like every roster, every team has these types of players where like we probably all overrate them a little bit more than the league does.
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be an interesting activity for us next week to go through another projected 53-man roster. So back to the offensive side of the ball. Anybody else that stood out to you guys on Saturday's game?
I thought that running back, now why am I drawing a blank on his name? I said it earlier in our group chat.
Dykes?
Dykes. Yeah, I thought Dykes came in and showed some juice, considering he's only been on the team for like 2-3 days. And I'm not sure, if he was brought onto the team to be able to compete, or if he was more of a body as they're starting to sit some more of these guys. But I think he came in. He actually had a couple good kick returns. And again, when he had the opportunity at running back, I think he showed a little bit more juice than both Dwayne McBride and Smith.
We're losing you a little bit
for what it is. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
So for what it's worth, I think that's interesting, because you have Dwayne McBride, who is kind of touted, as we mentioned last week, as this like steal of the draft, and he's getting outplayed by some guys who we signed off the street. So
yeah, again, it goes back to Miles's point a little bit, that we kind of overhyped these guys, and Dwayne McBride was somebody that was overhyped probably the second he was drafted. Not to say that he can't still be good and that he won't make the team, but with guys like Aaron Dykes that are coming in off the street and making the most of an opportunity, he looked a lot more elusive and quick and decisive on Saturday than Dwayne McBride did. But at the same time, McBride had a few good plays as well. So, but I do think, speaking of the running back room, Ty Chandler has all but secured that RB2 role, in my opinion. I thought, at least in the stuff that I watched, I know he's not getting the stats that you'd want, but he's also not playing a whole lot. But he looks elusive. His pass protection could probably use a little bit of work, but again, patient, quick decision, just a little bit of pop, and he's a natural pass catcher too, which I think is going to help kind of supplant Alexander Madison on third downs if need be. So
I still wonder what the plan is there. I want, because we know that they've been sniffing around some veteran running backs, and obviously they brought in Aaron Dykes instead of a Mike Davis or even a Kareem Hunt. But I'd just be curious if like waiver time comes around, maybe there's a guy that they want to bring in because they just don't trust some of the things like a Ty Chandler, Kenny Nwangu, who's been hurt and we still haven't heard anything about. And then obviously Dwayne McBride. So I'd just be curious. Maybe that's a position that we're just not sure what they end up doing behind Madison. I think Chandler's going to be around, so I'm not like suggesting he won't be, but maybe they bring in more true competition / like depth. So
yeah.
Well, and you put out that tweet earlier today, I think, Miles, around not just running backs, but also offensive guards or interior offensive linemen that potentially could be available. Who were some of those names again?
Yeah, let me pull those up.
Miles Gaskin was one.
I like the Michael
Boston
Carter.
Scott.
Oh yeah. So I just looked at like all the different rosters and like where their teams are running back wise. Like obviously Boston Scott for Philly. He's been good for them as like a pass catcher, explosive. Darrell Williams is a good receiver. He's out of the backfield. He's been with Kansas City, Arizona, and now he's with New Orleans. James Robinson was obviously with Jacksonville, got cut last year, was with the Patriots, got cut again. Super weird. And then obviously the Jets, who now have brought in Dalvin Cook to go with Breece Hall, and they drafted Israel. I'm going to butcher his name, so I apologize.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it, yeah.
But so like Zonovan Knight and Michael Carter, I feel like one of those guys is probably gone in that instance. And then similar thing with the Miami Dolphins with Salvin Ahmed and Myles Gaskin, with them driving Devin Achane and then bringing back Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert on 2-year deals. I feel like one of those guys is probably not making the team. And so one of those guys all these guys they have pass catching ability, and they're guys that have experience in the NFL that the Vikings could use. And so there are just some names that like stood out to me as I like looked across the league on some like depth charts and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's good to get a good glimpse at that because, again, it's not just the people on our 90-man roster that are going to make the final 53. It could be from elsewhere. And I appreciated you going through and looking at some of those names. I want to talk about two more, a position group and a person before we wrap and get your thoughts there. So, Ryan, I'll let you pick which one you want to go with. But offensive line was a talking point on Saturday after the game. And then Jaron Hall is that, developmental quarterback that everyone's kind of talking about. So thoughts on either one of those, and then we can segue to the next one.
Yeah, I'll take the Jaron Hall piece. I don't think that we're giving him a ton, as you and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the group chat we have, where they're not putting a ton on his plate, right? They're giving him some easier concepts.
It's a Christian Ponder playbook right now.
A little bit, right? And again, I think that that's actually a smart way to go about it, because you don't want to completely destroy his confidence if he's not able to, pull a Kirk Cousins and just do the 3-step drops and completely read a defense. So, getting him some easy completions, getting that confidence up is something I think that they're trying to do. I thought he played a lot better this week than he did the week prior. Again, obviously we probably simplified things a bit and gave him some easier looks, but and the offensive line, obviously they were playing decent at best, which again, we're about to get to, especially the depth pieces of those. But overall, I thought that he played well. I think he got out of the pocket well. That touchdown drive that he led that led to a Dwayne McBride touchdown, that was a lot was on him, right? Getting out of the pocket, making some throws, scrambling, I think for 2 first downs or close to 2 first downs, and one of them was a big scramble for
needs to work on his sliding though.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know. I remember him kind of going up and not knowing which way to go and just kind of fell forward. But so yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting this kid to take over the backup job from the moment we drafted him or anything like that. I knew that he was going to be more of a developmental project, and I think right now it's going decently well. I wasn't expecting much more than what we saw this weekend, and I'm excited to see a bit more of him this coming weekend, especially with a signing. Was it Jordan? I don't know how to say the last name. Te'amu,
I think.
Te'amu.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to potentially see what he has too, right? I mean, he's been around either in this league or in the was it USFL or XFL that he's coming from. So, and he's shown to be pretty good. I think he won like the MVP or best player of the year in that minor league there. But so yeah, we'll see what he brings to the table as well. If he's just being brought in as a backup and we're going to let Jaron Hall run the whole game, kind of like Malik Willis did this week for the Titans, or if he's actually going to get some reps, like half a game or whatnot. So
I think with the Jaron Hall thing, and maybe this is just a me thing that I need to get over, because sometimes when you watch these players, you just want them to be like a little bit further along in their development always. But you do bring up some good points, and when watching him, like there were plays where I was like, wow, you did a great job like moving the pocket, keeping your eyes downfield, making good throws. But then there was some where he's just like staring his receiver down, and the safety is just reading it the whole way. He Donovan McNabbed a pass one time. He stood in the pocket way too long on another one. So I guess it's just those rookie growing pains. I really would like to still see him though, like with the twos, because some of those receivers are not getting the separation that they need for him, which means you have to kind of design those, screens and bootlegs. But then again, if they do get separation, the offensive line is just crashing down.
I was just gonna say it's the backup offensive line is trash. Like,
yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's segue into it.
Well, I feel like, to your point, like you want the receivers to get more, separation and get open, but at the same time, those are like kind of the backup depth receivers on this team, right? Like the guys on Saturday, Tristan Jackson, Jalen Reagor, and Brandon Powell were like, they've kind of made themselves like the 4, 5, 6 receivers on this roster, maybe 5, 6, 7. Jalen Naylor, obviously Jalen Naylor's been hurt. Sounds like he's back today, which is great news. But like those guys might all either make the roster. Like 2 of those 3 guys are probably going to make this roster. But to your point, I still felt like that the offensive line is just like we had. I'm going to pull up his name because I cannot, like, for the sake of me.
Alan Alley or whatever.
Thank you. Alan Alley was the starting left guard on Saturday. He was a college free agent this year. I'm not saying college free agents like an Ivan Pace was a free agent, but like
it's a tall task.
It's a tall task for a guy, and he's not making the roster. Like it's tough because they haven't brought anybody like real competition into that interior guard spots. They had to move Blake Brandel into guard. Last week he was
really well.
Well, right, but Brandel was playing left guard last week. He's now playing right guard this week. Like they need to bring in somebody that, like, I still think Brandel should make the team. I think he's like your utility, like backup lineman,
everything but center.
Yeah, which is great. Like I don't have any. I think every team should have a guy like that, but I still think they need a true guard that they can bring in that has some veteran experience to push both the starters, but also be like actual depth. And because we have no idea what's going on with Chris Reed, at this point you obviously can't expect anything to come out of that.
Yeah.
So I think they should be making moves to figure that out.
And some of the names you mentioned in that tweet from the interior alignment perspective were Greg Van Rotten from the Vegas,
which sounds like he might be a lock for that team, but like he was just someone I just
sure. And David Edwards and Ike Botker from Buffalo, and then Betker, and then my boy Cody Ford from Cincinnati.
Which I already got yelled at for that because he's trash, which he has been bad. So
he hasn't been good. No, it's been
grass is always greener, Miles.
Right.
It's an interesting talking point for sure. Obviously, they brought in Dalton Reisner for a visit a few weeks ago. Maybe this game was enough for them to be like, we need somebody in there. Like, I think the only 2 standouts for me were Blake Brandel and Vidarian Lowe. I thought both of them played well for, given the circumstances. Oli Udoh, I don't know if it's just a technique issue. I don't think he played as bad as people want to portray. When you let up sacks and pressures, I get that people are going to be down your throat a little bit, but
he just had that two plays in a row that were absolutely brutal. And
yeah. I'm not like equating him to Phil Loadholt, but like Phil Loadholt back in the day was like a good right tackle, but he always would have those like 1 or 2 plays, or like he'd false start where he'd like kind of fall forward, and everyone would be like, "Oh, Phil Loadholt, what the hell?" And it's just like it felt like that's kind of the reaction we got for Oli Udoh on Saturday a little bit. But yeah,
Sure.
offensive line is definitely something that we need to address.
Over these next 2 weeks, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to bring guys in or whatnot, or trade for people, whatever it is. So it'll be interesting what happens.
I think the tough part with obviously I think we'd all say, oh, Dalton Risner would be an easy one, and I think we all agree with that. But I think what the Vikings are looking for, not even just money, I think what the Vikings are looking for is they're looking for a cheaper option, but also a guy that is willing to accept a backup role. And I think that's a huge difference for probably where Dalton Risner is in his career and what he's been able to do.
They're not ready to give up on Ingram quite yet. Or I guess it could even be Ezra Cleveland.
That's what bothers me is that everybody says it's only Ingram, but it's definitely both guys. And I more so because Cleveland is not long-term here unless he signs a cheap deal or whatever. But Ingram is someone they spent a second-round pick on. So they're not going to just a year ago. They're not just going to give up on that. So yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll have a lot more to probably continue to talk about, but those are probably the main talking points from Saturday's game. We did mention Najee Thompson, right?
No, not really.
Oh, I mean, but he'll make the team. Yeah, he brings the energy. I mean, at work, he's your
good gunner. So
yeah,
we love that. So, but yeah, this week is going to be interesting. One more final game coming up here, and then cut down day is, I don't know what day it is specifically. But yeah, there's going to be some changes for sure. So we'll probably come back. I don't know. I haven't talked to you guys about it, but we've been doing Tuesday live shows. So I'll plan on being here. If you guys want to join, you can, but like and subscribe, come back for more content. The regular season is almost here. And then the real fun conversations start, because this is just filling space. But until next time, I'm Matt, that's Ryan, and Miles. Skol Vikes.